Good evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news on George Stories. I am Oyin Okbala. Let's begin. A historic visit to Bamenda has drawn global attention as religious and traditional leaders seize the moment to renew urgent calls for peace in southern Cameroons, Ambazonia. During the landmark visit of the Pope Leo XIV to Mankon, Bamenda, messages from across the political and social divide converged on a shared concern: the protracted war in the Cameroons and its devastating humanitarian impact, especially on Ambazonians. The Ambazonian State Army called on the pontiff to intervene in the ongoing war, while Catholic Archbishop Nkea delivered what has been tagged an emotional appeal for reconciliation and an end to the violence. In his address, Pope Leo XIV urged peace and responsible leadership across the Cameroons, emphasizing dialogue, restraint, and the protection of civilian lives amid years of unrest. Traditional religious leaders in Mankon also used the occasion to acknowledge the toll of the war, expressing a unified desire for healing, stability, and coexistence despite years of violence and displacement. The convergence of these messages at a single high-profile visit shows both the depth of the crisis and the growing urgency for a durable peace settlement in Cameroons, Ambazonia. All these and more will bring on tonight's Undaunted, but first, let's get the prime headlines. Tonight on Undaunted, we'll take a look at the Ambazonian State Army urging Pope Leo XIV to intervene in the Ambazonian war during his historic visit to Bamenda. Also tonight, Archbishop Nkea's speech will be totally looked into. Tonight, we'll take a look at the reconciliation and the responsible leadership urged by the Pope to the Cameroons. And also religious and traditional rulers in Mankon calls for peace amid the acknowledgement of the war and its impact on the African scene. We'll take a look at Julius Malema, sentenced to 5 years in prison over firearm offense. On the global scene, UN warns of rising risk of regional war in Great Lakes and its region amid worsening crisis. Now let's get the news and full briefings. Derek Prop The Ambazonian State Armed Forces and representatives of the people of Southern Cameroons have issued a strongly worded statement welcoming Pope Leo XIV during his maiden visit to Bamenda today, April 16, 2026, while simultaneously calling for urgent international intervention in their nation. Describing the visit as historic, the group said thousands of residents defied significant security risks to gather and receive the pontiff during years of violence in the southern Cameroons. Well, according to the statement, many more would have attended but were unable to do so due to persistent insecurity that has gripped Ambazonia since 2017. The ASA used the occasion to draw global attention to what it characterized as a deepening humanitarian crisis. The statement accused the government of Paul Biya of carrying out widespread violence in southern Cameroons, citing reports of killings, mass displacement, and arbitrary detention. Framing the crisis in human terms, the group emphasized the toll on civilians, noting that the entire communities have been disrupted by years of conflict. It argued that behind official narratives lies a population enduring daily hardship, fear, and uncertainty. The state army also highlighted the nation's religious diversity, pointing out that Christians, Muslims, and even followers of traditional beliefs all joined in welcoming the Pope. The ASA described this unity as evidence of a shared longing for peace and justice, regardless of religious or cultural differences. In a direct appeal, the group called on the Pope to use his global moral authority to push for an end to hostilities. Specifically, it urged him to advocate for an immediate halt to military operations, the release of detainees, and broader respect for what he described as the right to self-determination of the people of southern Cameroons. The statement further referenced international legal principles, including those associated with the African Union, calling for respect of established borders and the withdrawal of Cameroonian forces from contested areas. Now let's get an excerpt from the ASA speech.
Most Holy Father, the ongoing genocide in Ambazonia is not only a humanitarian catastrophe of epic proportions, but also the most brutal genocide ever known in the history of the African continent. One that finds striking parallel only in the Nazi Holocaust of the 1930s. Your Holiness, Ambazonia, being a melting pot for religious pluralism, is built on the principle of respect for the fundamental rights to religious freedom. And here we have various Christian denominations, Muslims, adherents of African traditional religion, and multiple religious movements. And with high hopes and expectations, they have all converged on Bamenda today to say to Your Holiness, Benedictus qui venit in nomine Domini, Hosanna in excelsis Deo. Because the southern Cameroons Ambazonian people recognize that Your Holiness have come to Ambazonia not just as a spiritual leader of the largest Christian denomination, the Catholic Church, that has over 1.4 billion faithfuls across the world, but also as a Prince of Peace, the global voice of justice and the hope of humanity. And at a moment when over 75,000 innocent lives have been brutally ended in Ambazonia, many hundreds of thousands forcibly exiled from the comfort of their homes, and thousands unjustly incarcerated in the dungeons of La République du Cameroun, with millions still littering the Jerusalem-Jericho road, with the priests, the Pharisees, and Levites passing only on the other side, the southern Cameroons Amazonian people only find a good Samaritan in the Most Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV, who incarnates justice, peace, compassion, and human dignity.
While positioning the Vatican as a potential mediator, the ASA expressed hope that the Holy One could play a constructive role in facilitating dialogue, negotiation, and eventual conflict resolution. It suggested that neutral, faith-based diplomacy could help bridge deeply entrenched divisions. The army showed its belief that the Pope's voice carried unique global influence, capable of reaching political leaders and reshaping international attention towards the war. It argued that such intervention could help shift momentum away from violence and towards peaceful engagement. Well, the statement concluded by portraying Pope Leo XIV as a pivotal figure in the search for peace in one of Africa's most protracted war, expressing optimism that this visit could mark the beginning of renewed international focus and meaningful steps towards justice and resolution. Oh well, today seems to be a historic day for all Ambazonians, especially those residing in Ambazonia and those who were in Bamenda today, to be specific. Let's have our in-house analyst, Barrister Mbeseha. Welcome to tonight's Undaunted. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, especially this morning.
All right, so the D-Day has come for about 2 months and even more ever since the official announcement of the Pope's visit to Africa, and especially the visit to the Cameroons, and most importantly the visit to Bamenda. I mean, it's been all hands on deck, all work in progress. The D-Day is here. Things are happening. Statements are being made here and there. Words are being appreciated. People are holding on to words. For some persons, it's a dream come true that they were able to see the Pope. Some of them that were able to, be at the Mass earlier today in Bamenda. For some other persons, they loved everything that they saw. But for starting off today, we here on Undaunted, we've been projecting, we've been setting out agendas, and of course preparing the foundation of today's visit in particular. We have a whole lot to talk about, talking about all that happened today, but let's start with the message from the ASA. I would say it was quite, it was quite a very direct message. The ASA didn't mince words. They went ahead to state categorically clear what they wanted, all that has happened, and what they would want this visit to yield, the fruits that they would want this visit to yield. I'm very sure that you would have gotten an audio before now. We did play that audio. I'm very sure that you would have gotten it before now, but I did a summary of that audio in place of a report today. Do you think that at this point, are you excited about how the ASA came forth with what they thought about today's visit by the Pope?
Well, I'm extremely excited, but if we take off from the message, we'll miss a lot of points. You see, the Papa visit officially started yesterday to Cameroon. The Papa visit is no joking matter, and so we have to start from where it started. Then we can be able to appreciate what the ASAs have said and whatever thing has happened in Bamenda today. You see, I said earlier that everything that comes out of the mouth of the Pope should be properly vetted. And every step that they take, even where they go to, is absolutely important. So let us start from where the journey started. The Pope landed in Yaoundé. And that was not all. He went to the presidency and met Paul Biya. That is the most important party in this struggle. Paul Biya is not just the head of state. He is the man who declared the war. Paul Biya in person, 30th of November. Paul Biya is the one who caused the problem. He's the one that in 1984 signed up for the final death of Ambazonia. Paul Biya is the one whose army is fighting against Ambazonia and killing. If the war has been going on forever, for 10 years, close to 10 years, it is because the government of Yaoundé is the one fighting. That's the most important party to the struggle. And so the president started from there.
Come, Barrister, please, let me interrupt you a bit. Barrister, please. We will definitely come to, we want to, pick up at this point. There are different aspects of tonight's, report where we'll talk about the speech proper. I would want you to talk up to, major on, the ASA speech. Yes, we'll get to Andrew Nkea's speech. We'll get to the Pope's speech as well. But I want you to start with this. We have all of those reports, and we want to just take it in this order so that we have a flow, sir.
Okay, let me take the order. See, what the ASA said today is very much on point. The ASAs are the other party to the struggle. The ASA, they are addressing the foreign visitor, the Pope, whom they believe has an intention to do good, to end the war in a just and rightful manner. And so there's nothing the Pope can do. There's nothing anybody, the archbishops and the kings and the Yahweh can do without the consent and the acceptance of the ASAs, because they're the only party in the war. And so their short message is clear to the point. What they expect of the Pope, what they hope he would do, above all, they have in a short manner told the foreign visitor, the Pope, what they have gone through. And so, talking about the message, it is to the point. It is delivered at the appropriate time. It is delivered when the Pope is in Bamenda. It was not delivered yesterday. It is delivered when the Pope is in Bamenda. Bamenda, for today, for now, as far as this struggle is concerned, is the center of the struggle for Ambazonia. Because Bamenda, the Archdiocese of Bamenda, which is headquartered in Bamenda, is composed of all these other dioceses of called Ambazonia. To name them, the Diocese of Boya, the Diocese of Kumba, Mamfe, Bamenda, and Kumbo. So the message is to the point. It's delivered at the appropriate moment. I think it is okay. Over to you.
I thank you so much, Barrister, who would proceed with our next report. Let's get what the Archbishop Nkea's speech was all about today. So today, during Pope Leo's visit to Bamenda, Archbishop Nkea delivered what many people have tagged as a deeply moving and unflinching address, to using the moment to spotlight the prolonged suffering and resilience of communities in Ambazonia that has been affected by the war. Southern Cameroons, Ambazonia has been grabbed and crippled by the war. Speaking before thousands gathered at the Metropolitan Cathedral, Archbishop Nkea stepped beyond what has been tagged as traditional tone of ceremonial welcome. Instead, he offered a powerful testimony shaped by years of witnessing conflict firsthand. His speech painted a picture of human toil, displacement, loss of life, fractured families, and a generation growing up amid instability. With visible emotion, he described the daily realities faced by ordinary people caught in the crossfire, emphasizing that behind political narratives are real lives marked by grief and endurance. He spoke as both a spiritual leader and a direct observer of the war, grounding his message in lived experience rather than abstraction. Let's get a feel of it and we'll return back.
For the past 8 years, many of our people have suffered a lot from a situation they did not create. Thousands are either internally displaced or escaped as refugees. Businesses were shut down, and for about 4 years, our children were not allowed to go to school. Children were used as a political bait. Many priests, religious, and bishops of this province have either been harassed, beaten, kidnapped, or even killed in this conflict. Yet, the Church continues to carry the gospel as a light of hope among a traumatized people. Many women have been rendered widows, children orphaned, and many people rendered homeless by this crisis. Most Holy Father, today that your feet are standing on the soil of Bamenda, that has drunk the blood of many of our children, we in Bamenda can address ourselves in the messianic words of the prophet Isaiah. A people that walked in darkness has seen a great light. We are happy because in this time of crisis, we see you as a messenger of peace. We see you as an ambassador of reconciliation. We see you as a promoter of justice. We see in you the presence of God Himself among us, who has come to visit His people like the dawn from on high. His blessings bring peace, and His words come like anointing on the wounds of those who are bleeding. With your presence here, Holy Father, I can confidently say, now is the time for peace. Most Holy Father, we shall reap the fruits of your visit for many years to come. And we are confident that the peace you have come to pray for shall return once again to this ecclesiastical province of Bamenda.
All right, so central to his address was a call for genuine peace, one that transcends political position, ethnic divisions, and religious identity. He says, peace is peace, he declared, showing that the value of human life and dignity must remain universal, regardless of affiliation. His words resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom have been, personally affected by the war. The Archbishop's remarks also carried an implicit appeal to the international community and national leaders, urging a renewed commitment to dialogue, justice, and reconciliation. He stressed that symbolic gestures are not enough. What is needed is sustained action that addresses root causes and restored trust among communities. The atmosphere in the cathedral reflected the weight of his message. Many attendants were visibly moved, some brought to tears, as his words echoed shared experiences of pain and hope. The speech quickly became one of the most talked about moments of the papal visit, showing the enduring role of religious leaders in advocating for, peace in conflict areas. But were they the only ones affected? Of course, the answer is no. And so, as the nation continues to grapple with uncertainty, Archbishop Nkea's address stands as a poignant reminder of the human dimension of the war and a call to ensure that the voices of those most affected are neither ignored nor forgotten. Barrister Mbeseha, the speech surprised a whole lot of people. When I went through some reaction from Analyst and some, civil activists and all of that, some were a bit surprised that, he could talk about the war in this light, because there were times when either he denied it or his words failed him, or, one thing or the other. But so many persons were amazed that he, came off and talked about the war in this light, in as much as he made it almost look like the religious leaders were the only ones affected. The good thing of it is that he talked about the war, talked about the consequences, talked about all of the disadvantages, that how it has affected everyone, including religious leaders. And of course, we could agree that it had a little bit of emotion rather than political, but I may be wrong. Let's hear how you perceived the speech.
Again, I said earlier that in this papal visit, every stop has a meaning. You see, the papal visit in Bamenda is properly designed for a purpose. The meeting in the cathedral was designed to meet the victims of this war by themselves and the civil society affected by the war. Archbishop Nkea is also a victim. He is the only bishop among the 5 bishops of the Archdiocese of 6 who has seen it all along. He started when he was the Bishop of Mamfe, and the war actually started in Mamfe, when they went there and bombarded the places and killed people. He was the Bishop of Mamfe. Now, today is the Archbishop of Bamenda, where the fire is burning day and night. So he too is a victim. If he says the priests have died, that is a fact. No priest, nobody, a priest is a human being, a bishop is a human being. Nobody wants to die in the process of war. But the problem is, to tell the story halfway, you will not get a complete version of Andrew Nkea's speech until you go back and hear what Reverend Funky, who is in that very hall in the cathedral, also said. Reverend Funky read a speech and said, amongst other things, that they, as religious, had constituted a committee headed by Archbishop Nkea for the purpose of peace. This is important. And that they had gone beyond all that. They had traveled abroad to see separatists, he calls them. They had sat at home and talked to the fighters, and the war did not end. And so they have to change and then admit one thing. If their efforts have all failed, it is because they didn't do everything that was necessary. They talked peace. They never talked about justice. They coincidentally were bought by Yaoundé, appointed, let me put it like this, to be the peace ambassadors. And they were financed for that purpose by Yaoundé. That's why they were given money to go abroad and buy those people who are Ambazonian fighter supporters. They didn't come abroad to say, let us sit down and negotiate. No, they came back to buy us. Lay down your arms and come and join us. They didn't call the voices in the bushes in the struggle to sit down and talk. They called the voices in the bushes to bribe them to lay down their arms and come to the DDR. They called on the boys to lay down their arms and go to the Grand National Dialogue. This was the mistake they made. They did not realize that you cannot end a conflict like that without addressing the root causes, without doing justice to the party. And so their efforts have failed, but they made the maximum, but this is where they made the mistake. If one of the parties buys you to become their peace ambassador, you buy their stand, you become part of them, the person who is for whom you are working. In this case, they are working for the government of Yaoundé. The whole idea which the Pope has said in Yaoundé yesterday is not just peace. There's no peace without justice. And so the emotional appeal from the Archbishop is perfect because I've just said he is a victim. As an Archbishop, as a bishop, as a son of the soil, he is from the Belem. The Belem has ceased to exist because of the war. His own uncles, his own aunties, and so on have also been killed. So he is just one of the victims by giving the platform to stand there and talk. And so his appeal is very emotional, is acceptable. But now they agree that for 10 years. But he says a lot of things that are not perfect. See, the children didn't go to school for almost 10 years, 4 years he calls it. But it's not because somebody did not allow them, because he says they have not been allowed to go to school. No. Nobody more than others did not go to school. It is a war. People were frightened. People are scared. As far as Ambazonian and as this government is concerned, our policy was clear. If it's safe for you to go to school, go. But they will not go to school because it was not safe. And above all, he will not even tell us that most of the schools, because as of today, a number of schools in that area are mostly government schools. Most of the schools closed down. Government pulled away their own teachers because of the insecurity that they created. So it's not that somebody put a policeman at the road said don't go to school. The war forced them not to go to school. When he said they were not allowed to go to school, it gives the impression that somebody was the one preventing them from going to school. No, that's double talking. And so finally, the Pope, their boss is there. He will listen. He has listened to them. He will listen to other victims who are all in the cathedral. Again, the mission, the meeting in the cathedral was essential to listen to the victims, listen to the people, their own side of the story, and above all, like the ASA, hear their own demand. What do they really need to end this suffering? Suffering is rare. I've said this many times here. It is not a joke. War is not a walk in the park. And so people have died. People have been kidnapped, including some bishops, Cardinal Tumi. The recent bishop was just named Bamenda was kidnapped. Some priests were killed in Moyenge, in the Mbeseha diocese. Some were killed in Manfred, where he was. Some, I think, died in Kumba. And so, this is rare. But they have done their best. But again, they missed the point. The point was that, like the Pope has said, you see, you do not end a conflict without going to the root causes. Because you cannot make justice. Justice is not that you are asking someone to pay you a sum of money. Like, they know it better than you. They are all prelates. They are priests, Catholic priests in the first place, bishops. They go to confession. People come and confess their sins. The punishment they give you there for telling the truth, as told, are killed. It's not to send you to prison. It's not to go and lock you up. Confess your sins. That's the root cause of your problem. Your sins are forgiven you by the Lord. Fine imposed on you. There's no prison term involved. And so you're in conflict. When you are in terms of knowledge, you are in conflict with your own self, with your soul. You have to confess your sins by telling the truth of what happened. I killed her, I killed him, I stole his money because I was very poor. I did this, I did that. And so that's the proper avenue. The father of all fathers, the Pope, the Bishop of all is sitting right there with some chief. Listening, he has listened to Archbishop Andrew. He has listened to civil society right there. Chief, funds, Muslims. And that is the beginning, that is the rightful beginning. Now they have admitted they don't do the job. It was better for someone else to come in, and then maybe they will listen to their cry. May this be a better step forward? It would. If all time we go back to the first set to talk about of the messenger was Jamundi,
All right. Thank you so much, Barrister. Let's proceed with some other aspects of this particular visit. Let's focus on the Pope's address now. Pope Leo addressed the Cameroonian authorities and their diplomatic communities with a message that blended encouragement with clear moral call for action, urging the country to embrace peace, justice, and inclusive governance. He began by expressing gratitude for the warm welcome and praised the Cameroons as Africa in miniature, showing its cultural, linguistics, and geographical diversity as a strength that should serve as a foundation for unity rather than division. Describing himself as a servant of dialogue, fraternity, and peace, the Pope said his visit shows the solidarity of the Catholic Church with the people of Cameroons and its desire to support efforts towards building the common good. He warned, however, of a growing sense of resignation among citizens, noting that many people, especially young people, feel powerless despite their deep desire for justice, participation, and meaningful change in society. Recalling the visit of Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict, he challenged the nation to reflect on whether past messages about reconciliation, justice, and service have translated into real progress. Drawing on the teachings of St. Augustine, he emphasized that leadership should be rooted in service, not power, and that those in authority have a duty to act with compassion and integrity for the benefit of all citizens. That's not all. A major highlight of the Pope was the release of white doves. Let's get that feel before we continue.
My dear brothers and sisters, Today, the Lord has chosen all of us that peace will truly reign among us, that as we release these white doves, symbol of peace, that God's peace will be upon all of us, upon this land, and keep us all united in His peace.
Well, turning to the country's ongoing war, the Pope released doves and acknowledged the severe suffering caused by the war in what has been called the Northwest, Southwest, and Far North regions, pointing to loss of life, displacement, and the erosion of hope among young people. He called for a rejection of violence and introduced the idea of disarmed peace. Disarmed peace. One, he says, is built on trust, justice, and dialogue rather than fear, weapons or force. Quoting the brother appeals of Pope Francis, he stressed that peace cannot simply be declared but must be lived through concrete action, inclusive policies, and a genuine commitment to listening to citizens. In conclusion, the Pope showed that peace is a shared responsibility, urging leaders to rise above partisan interests and work with civil society to build lasting solutions that restore truth, dignity, and hope for all Cameroonians. Barrister, probably it could be tagged as, a day of speeches. The Pope is the most respected religious leader across the world. When it comes to, we can see the gathering of all that attended the mass that he had in Bamenda today. And so he has spoken. He talked about this armed peace. He also made mention that all of justice is reconciliation and peace is not just about justice and all of that. That there must be an inclusive politics, meaning everybody should come together regardless of what you may be holding against each other. So he's giving up that that responsibility to all leaders. That's what he tagged there. He said all leaders, it is your responsibility to come together. Now, with the kind of respect that he commands, his presence has commanded so much respect. Should we talk about the fact that even the president of French Cameroon, who has really not been very present, was present at some point to receive him, even if not at the airport. I mean, we all know why he may have not been everywhere, but he made himself available to receive the Pope and all of that. So he is respected, his presence is respected, his visit is respected and loved as well. Do you think, Barrister Mbeseha, that his words, the words that we've read out here, the words that he spoke, would also be respected by all leaders that are involved, especially in ensuring that this war is brought to a halt or a close?
I don't know, but this is what is important. You see, when the Pope arrived, that's what I was trying to analyze earlier. You see, he arrived the capital of the country. All that thing going to the airport is not material. The most important thing is that he met the president and those people who matter politically in Cameroon. He met them physically in a meeting. We were focusing on the last episode on speech, as an emotional speech. He was welcoming the Pope. That is important. What we want to hear going forward is what the Pope said, because we already know that Andrew and the rest, you and me, have lived the thing. The important thing is to focus on what the guests that were expecting action or does. And so if you go to Yaoundé, the Pope did not just speak. Before the Pope spoke, Pope just spoke. Nobody's even focusing on what Pope was saying. Well, welcome here, this is Christian, this is where everybody. That was not important. Looking at the Pope. You have tried to mix up two things there. The dove was today, was not yesterday. The dove is a symbol of peace. But then, back to what he said yesterday, as I tried to say, when the Pope comes, he has a mission. He didn't just leave the Vatican by accident. He knows what message he wants to deliver to who. He, for example, knows that there's the Northwest and Southwest. He mentioned it yesterday there, right there at the palace. The pain of the people of the Northwest and Southwest, he called them by name. And then he knew that he was going to Bamenda. But the center of the struggle is in Yaoundé, because the government of Cameroon is based in Yaoundé. The political leadership that can end the war, if they want to end it, is in Yaoundé. And we're already used to high instructions in Cameroon. This message is coming to you from the president through the prime minister. No, this is not the time of high instructions. It was the time of communication. Talking live to Paul Biya, not through third parties. And so, as I said, I tried to say earlier, Paul Biya is actually crucial in ending the struggle, the fight in Ambazonia, the genocide. Because of the history, he is part of the problem. When he came to power in the early 1960s, the problem was already there. So he knows what happened in 1961. He knows it so well. If you see Paul Biya sitting president today, who in 1984 signed his decree abolishing Southern Cameroon practically. It is he, Paul Biya himself, who stood at the airport 30th of November 2019, I think, and declared war on Ambazonia. It is he who is appointing generals left and right. It is he who is doing everything to prosecute the war. It is he who can end the war. It is he who can agree to go to negotiations. He himself, he has to commit himself to that. That is why, in some other segments here on ABC, when they said they went to Canada for negotiation, they went here and left and right. I asked, when they went to Canada, who sat there to represent Paul Biya? Because somebody who is going to sit on that conference table to represent the government of Cameroon must be somebody recognized by Paul Biya, somebody that can get a phone call to Paul Biya himself. Not to talk to Ngongo, not to talk to Chantal before he passes the word there. And so when the Pope comes to Yaoundé and meets these people, those are the government actors. They are the strongest party to the problem. He did not expect to find the ASAs represented at the Tudi. They could not be there. So he first meets them. And if you hear what he said, he talked about peace. But he said, peace cannot go without negotiation. Peace cannot go without dialogue. He addressed a lot of issues that he came to Cameroon for. Rwanda is in Yaoundé, after Yaoundé, Bamenda, after Bamenda, Douala. He's addressing different issues that concern the governance of Cameroon. But as far as Cameroon, Ambazonia is concerned, he had to address that thing in more detail. I don't even expect him to come out with more detail in Bamenda than he had in Yaoundé. Because that's where that is the epic center of the issue. The Ambazonian struggle is rooted in Yaoundé. For good or for bad, it is rooted in Yaoundé. The Yaoundé leadership is headed by people, politicians. They are all in Yaoundé. They are the people that the Pope will leave, and they will go to sit in conferences. They will sit in private conversations to discuss it. And so what he said to them there is absolutely important. Because he was not just talking to them, he was talking to the world. The world press was there. The Vatican was there. International news reporters were all there. It was not a secret meeting. I'm sure maybe you have a secret meeting, but this was a public pronouncement on issues that are important. But as far as Ambazonia is concerned, he laid the foundation. Peace is not decreed. It's not something of sitting down there and say, well, peace has returned, let's just go and reconstruct. And then you pretend to reconstruct, you reconstruct nothing. Peace must come from the heart. And that's the significance of that dove. Dove in the Bible talks about peace. It talks about good things. It is a white dove. I've never seen a black dove. But that is what it signifies. And so, the mission in Yaoundé was absolutely important. The message was properly delivered. then they will have what they will have in Bamenda today, which should be secondary. Again, as I've said, Bamenda has two things to do: meeting the victims at the cathedral. And if I missed it, I saw people there, front coming up to speak, people, women, whoever came out to say, well, this war has dealt with us, including the Archbishop himself. Our priests have been killed, our children are not going to school, our houses have been burnt. That's the role of the victims. That is the purpose. Then he will go, I'm sure you have done it already, he will go and say a mass at the airport. In that mass, he will preach a sermon. Sermons are not debates. They will deliver a one-way traffic message on what he thinks should be done or his feelings about it. And that will be it. So up to this point, I think the best has been done. We can say that the Pope has done his rightful thing. But like I said before, the Pope can only wish, the Pope can only impress on the people what they should do. You cannot force them. It will all depend upon what Yaoundé thinks about the papal visit. Again, we don't know how predictable Yaoundé is. If the story is true, in the today yesterday, when the Pope was talking, what happened? XIV cut off communication to prevent the Pope papal message from going out. It's not our imagination they did it. Because shortly after that, the general manager of XIV put out a communique trying to explain that, well, some fibers were not there, that's why it didn't fail. Which was a lie. Because the oil network that deals with those communications, which is a government network, put out a counter thing to say you're lying. The fibers were there. If they were not there, how did the presidential, the television at the presidency work? So you find the fine prints of Yaoundé, they can cut off a foreign head of state, where he's saying what they don't like. And then they will fake lies to tell. Just confirming what the Pope was telling them right there. You have to be open. You have to be honest. Who on earth would understand how XIV will cut off the Pope? Talking right at the presidency with the president. And then fake out excuses for that. So you find the magnitude of the people we are dealing with. They are hardened criminals. If they cannot even, in fact, the cut of that thing when Pope was sitting there. If they could not respect the Pope, the foreign head of state, who was there live talking with their own president, how far would they respect the recommendations from the Pope? We don't know. But we pray they should. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Barrister. Well, a whole lot of persons has come together as a point of, duty, especially as this visit is concerned. Let's head into the next report, where religious and traditional leaders in southern Cameroons have issued a united appeal for peace, reconciliation, and interfaith solidarity during a high-profile welcome ceremony for the head of the Catholic Church in Mankon, Bamenda. Well, in his address, the founder of Mankon reflected on the deep historical ties between traditional authorities and the growth of Christianity in the region. Recalling the warm reception given to early Catholic missionaries who arrived in the Cameroons in 1890 and later in Mankon in 1894, he noted that traditional rulers played a foundational role in the establishment of the church, including the donation of land on which major religious and educational institutions now stand. The fund paid tribute to his grandfather, His Majesty King Dofere III, who donated land in 1935 for the establishment of the first Catholic parish in Mankon, now the site of the cathedral hosting the visit. He also praised the Catholic Church for its long-standing contributions to education, healthcare, and social development, showing the transformative role of this institution in Ambazonia. Let's get that. Pray for peace.
The traditional rulers of the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon on the occasion of the maiden visit of His Holiness Pope Leo XIV at the Metropolitan Cathedral Mankon, Bamenda. Your Holiness, on behalf of the traditional rulers, custodians of the heritage and traditions of the Northwest and Southwest regions, I wish to offer a cordial welcome to you in Mankon, Bamenda, Cameroon. The traditional rulers have played a very important strategic role in the establishment and growth of Christianity in Cameroon, especially west of the Mungo River. With Catholicism, when Catholicism came to Cameroon in 1890, and in this part of the country with the missionaries arriving at Bonjongo in 1894, they were welcomed by the traditional rulers of the time. Most of the lands on which the churches and schools were built were donated by the traditional rulers. And today we can proudly say that we too have been evangelizers by extension. Particularly, I am glad that I am welcoming the Pope, head of the Catholic Church in the world, in Mankon land. And this cathedral in which we are is built on land that was given by my grandfather, King Deufur III, for the creation of the first parish here in 1935. The people of Mankon wish to thank you for this great honor. We use this opportunity to thank the Pope for the great work of evangelization and the social services the Catholic Church offers to our people. Some of the best schools, colleges, universities, hospitals, and orphanages are run by the Catholic Church. We pray the Church continues to improve the lives of our people through these services.
While expressing gratitude for these contributions, the fund also acknowledged the realities of the war and instability that have affected communities across Ambazonia. He noted that the impact of violence has been deeply felt, but stressed that there is a shared desire amongst the people for lasting peace, stability, and healing. In a separate address, the chief imam representing the Muslim community extended warm greetings and emphasized the importance of interfaith cooperation. He described the visit as a powerful symbol of unity among faith traditions and reaffirmed shared values of compassion, faith, and peaceful coexistence. He also spoke openly about the effect of recent violence, noting that both Christians and Muslim communities have suffered losses, including lives lost, families, displacements, and growing insecurity. He stressed that these challenges are collective in nature and require united response beyond the religious divides. Despite the hardships, the chief imam called for hope and resilience, urging communities to reject violence and strengthen dialogue, mutual respect, and cooperation in pursuit of peace. Both leaders, in their respective messages, acknowledged the painful reality of conflict and its widespread impact on all communities. At the same time, they expressed a shared commitment to peace, emphasizing that religious differences should not divide people in the face of common suffering. Let's get an excerpt of the Imam.
Bamenda Cathedral, meeting with the people of Bamenda, this Thursday, 16th of April 2026. Speech from the Chief Imam of Buea on behalf of the Muslim community of Northwest and Southwest. Your Holiness, I greet you in the name of Allah, who is most compassionate, the most merciful. The Islamic community is happy with your presence here as a representative of God, who is the author of all that is good, who is the bringer of peace, the lover of mankind. On the 14th of November, 2025, Your Holiness, some armed men invaded the mosque of Sabga, about 20 kilometers from Bamenda, during prayer session and killed 3 people, injuring 9 others. Again, on the 14th of January 2026, armed men targeted cattle rearers from the Boro ethnic community and killed at least 15 people. Including children. The Islamic community has suffered in many English-speaking towns and villages.
Oh well, sad speeches here and there. Everyone that had suffered got a time to speak. The ceremony concluded with a strong message of unity, with both Christian and Muslim leaders presenting a rare and powerful alignment and calling for reconciliation, stability, and enduring peace across southern Cameroons. Barrister Mbeseha, at the end of the day, everyone is affected by a common factor. And like you would say, the visit had a purpose. The purpose is probably to talk about all of the war and all of the, all of the killings, the marginalization, and all of that. Everyone has spoken. The Archbishop, the traditional leaders, the Muslim community, they are all affected by one common factor. And that common factor they've presented to the fore. As far as we are concerned, it's all about talk. At what point will the action that you mentioned about in your last reaction to the report, at what point do you think that all of the action that is necessary to establish the reconciliation that everyone is seeking for, at what point will that action come?
The action will come, but let me say this. You see, when people are given the opportunity on these occasions, sometimes they miss the point. I'm sorry to say that. You see, the founder of Mankon, he was speaking on behalf of traditional rulers across Northwest and Southwest, they call it. The Papa visit was not meant to address issues of land. To the best of my knowledge, I think I'm right, all the 5 cathedrals in the 5 archdioceses of Bamenda, the one in Boya was built on land given them free. The one in Kumba, same. The one in Memphis, same. Bamenda and so. And perhaps there's a co-cathedral in Boya that they are just building. These lands are giving them free. All the schools, you can talk about ballet, Sase, all these schools, they had the land free. That is not the issue now. The issue now is, now the Pope is coming there not for that history. It's coming for the purpose of this war. I should have expected the founder of Mankon to say that they, as traditional rulers, what role have they played or do they intend to play to bring peace and justice to the community? Because the children who are dying are theirs. If not by their own birth, they are the children of their own citizens, of their subjects. The women who are being raped are their wives or the wives of their citizens. And so I expected him to use that opportunity to say exactly how they, the traditional rulers across the board, can help to bring peace and justice. That's why the Pope is there. And it is nowhere, it is properly covered by Andrew. Andrew said in his own presentation, there is no peace for Muslims. There is no sacred peace for Catholics, for Protestants. Peace is peace for everybody. And so he said, introduced that it is because of this that they have invited this Andrew, that they have been able to invite the imams. They have been able to invite all religious organizations to come to the cathedral and welcome the Pope for the essence of peace. And so that's where sometimes they miss the opportunity. What the imam is saying there, the Boro came and kill people somewhere. They attacked the mosque. That is not because of the war. They have their Boro Fulani cattle issues, cattle grazing issues. It's not the cause of this war. If the war were not there, they would do same thing. But the administration should be able to handle it. And that's what I think I've said that many times here. If the administration is still in Bamenda, this is how all happened in the Northwest, somewhere also in Akwaya. If the Jews are there, prevent them from handling those things. Is it this war that is preventing them? No. It's just because the government Yaoundé has ignored those things. Because when it came to Bakassi, where there was oil, they fought and went to court. They sent soldiers to stop Nigeria from occupying the land because they wanted to own Bakassi because of land. But when they come to Berlin, when the Boros cross to Berlin and drive away people in Akwaya, nobody cares because Akwaya does not produce gold. Akwaya does not produce diamond. And so again, these people have missed, some of them missed the point. They were not brought into the cathedral there to talk about how they gave land to the churches, how the priests came and opened schools left and right. That was not the purpose. They are brought there as victims of this war. So they should express themselves in terms of the war. How will this community help? Like Funky, the former moderator said, well, we've tried. I'm a former moderator. The peace, we went and talked to the separatists. We tried to buy them over. We went to Europe, abroad, and talked to them. That's fine. That was their own effort, even though we didn't hear the food. And so these people, the Pope didn't come there for all the time. The Pope should have been willing, listening to them. The Pope is saying peace, negotiations. How would they make this people happen? And it's important for those traditional rulers, because they are not just traditional rulers. They are traditional rulers who are controlled by the government. The founder of Mankon, his fight before him, they are the members of the Central Committee. They are the politically sensitive, important people in that country. It's not only Mankon. You get the founder of this, members of the Senate, members of all this. They have political weight. And so what are they doing to bring the peace and justice? It's a political problem. They have involved themselves in politics. What are they doing now to solve this problem? That's where the focus should be. But I hope they will have to address that somewhere else. Because what the Pope is coming for, what you and me want, is that there should be the end to this war. There should be dialogue, there should be negotiation, there should be peace and justice. As simple as that. That's the mission of the Pope. Until today, I've not heard any community in Ambazonia or even the whole of Cameroons have chased out the mission. Say, give back our land, close down your school. They've not done that. And so the funds who was put on their behalf should have used that opportunity to give us their own role. Because we know there are some funds who are so tainted. But whatever is the case, they too need peace. Because the victims are their children, the victims are their citizens. And so that's why they are brought there. They were not brought there to tell stories that are irrelevant. The Imam was not brought there to say all those things. What is he said about Abdul Karim? He's a Muslim who was captured from Bamenda for doing nothing and locked up there. As Andrew says, there's no peace for Muslim only. There's no peace for Catholics only. Abdul Karim did nothing. He's a Muslim. He's even known as a Muslim cleric. They took him to Yaoundé, jailed him for whatever number thing with that trial. And that's a Muslim. And so the Muslim, the Imam of Buya, what have they been doing in Buya? At least to bring the peace. What effort have they made? How many times have they visited the prisoners in Buya prison? Or the ones in Bamenda, the prisoners in Bamenda, or anywhere else in Cameroon and Woman, and so on and so forth. So they should wait to put in their own efforts and say, well, this is our own position. Because if all of them came together, and they should come together, and tell Yaoundé enough is enough, we no longer want this war. Let us bring these children together. Let us negotiate. Let us agree on some solution to the problem. But sitting there and telling stories of how the Boros come and attack somebody in the mosque, which has nothing to do with the war, is irrelevant. Over to you.
All right, Barrister. In all of this, the Ambazonian government, are watching, and there is a lot that would be discussed and said. Of course, this week on Undaunted, Ambazonian this week rather, that will be coming over the weekend. There will be a whole lot that will be, discussed and analyzed. But first, let's get this video from Dr. Martin Mongwa, who is, of course, the SOS for IT and communication. Let's get that, then we'll come back to analyze that.
My fellow citizens, we welcome the Holy Father to our land at this defining moment. His visit is not political, it is moral. It is a moment for the world to see the reality of our people and to hear a truth that cannot be silenced. From the outset of his pontificate, we have recognized the consistent message of the Holy See. that true peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice, dignity, and truth. That principle guides our position today. In our engagement with the Holy See, we have consistently affirmed that the path forward must be rooted in justice, dignity, and truth, and that reconciliation must be sincere, inclusive, and grounded in these values. Our people have chosen to appear in black, not as protest, but as testimony, a testimony of lives lost, of suffering endured, and of a people who remain standing. We are aware of the tensions surrounding this visit. In the days leading up to this moment, concerns were raised about possible provocations that could disrupt a peaceful and dignified reception. What this underscores is the need for calm, discipline, and responsibility from all. We call on all our citizens to remain calm, disciplined, and peaceful. Our strength is not in reaction. It is in our unity and our dignity. Let the world see who we are, a people of faith, a people of resilience, and a people whose voice cannot be erased. To the international community, we say, this is a moment to witness, to listen, and to respond with clarity and responsibility. Our commitment remains firm, a just and lasting peace, one rooted in dialogue, accountability, and respect for human life. To our people, I say, stand firm, stand peaceful, and stand united. A people who remember cannot be erased. Thank you.
Barrister, a people who remember cannot be erased, and that is what today is going up for. Remember all of the struggles that Ambazonians would have had to, hold on up until today. What would you have to say about the very short but precise speech by Dr. Martin Mungwa?
I don't know how to confirm or ratify or to think that every single comma, every single full stop put there was correct. That's what I was saying in the last segment. Dr. Mungwa has addressed the issues involved without using many sentences. We wear black just as a sign of resilience. He tells the international community, what do you see us to be? He tells the Pope in his last sermon, the people who cannot be erased. They want a lasting peace, but a peace with justice. As simple as that, because the Pope is there for that. He's not there for any other thing else. If people do not understand us, they should understand from that simple short statement from Dr. Mungwa. Our ASAs, they have stopped the war, give you the peace to be there for your 2 days. But all does not depend on us. We want partners in this thing to do peace with justice, peace with accountability, in my own words. And so I don't know how better he could have put that. That's the best summary of anybody who stands for this, who understands the problem of Ambazonia, or call it British Southern Cameroon. And that's what the Pope understands. That's what the Pope says, peace cannot be decreed. It should be something that comes out of the mind. That's why the symbol of the dove is important. The dove is not a domestic animal. It's not a domestic bird. They caught that thing. They didn't kill it. After what the Pope said, they let it go. It flew away in peace. So Dr. Mungwa, I think, has hit the point, to a point that I doubt if somebody else can criticize him. To me, that's the best message that he could have sent to the Pope. That's the best message he has sent to the world. That's the best message that he has repeatedly sent to Yaoundé. If they have ears to hear, let them hear. If they have eyes to see, let them see. He was talking himself in black. Not because he loves black, but as a symbol. A symbol of what? Of what is happening today in the cathedral. A symbol of the victims of unacceptable violence. Yes, like the Imam said, they came into the mosque and killed somebody. That's bad. But they went to some other village and burned down the whole village for nothing. They went to Ngaibu and killed children and their pregnant mothers. in the name of war, in the name of trying to eliminate a people who you cannot efface in the last sentence of Dr. Mumbo. You cannot efface a people like that. You might want to destroy them, but you cannot destroy all of them. If you can want to assimilate them, you cannot assimilate all of them. I think his message is up to the point. I would rather say congratulations for the good message. Over to you.
All right, but before we let you go, let's look at this now. Looking at all of the interventions generally and what has been presented, what would you say about those who think that these individuals were maybe handpicked to misrepresent the actual collateral damages of the war? Because when you look at this, I doubt if they presented these things the way they should have been presented or the way it is actually. So what would you say about those that think that these individuals all put together may have been handpicked?
I don't know how they were choosing, but each of them has a significance. If they had to choose a traditional ruler, for example, if on a Mankon, on which territory they are, who commands a big population, would have been the right person, and they chose him. I'm not sure they vetted what they would say. If they chose an imam to represent the Muslim community, that was just enough. That was just the right thing to do. When he says, where he limits himself to the boroughs being attacked in a particular spot, it's his own choice. If they chose Dorin Funky, a retired moderator of the Presbyterian Church, that was a good target. But I think, what everything they said, what will the Pope, because they are talking to the Pope, what is a take home from the Pope? The take home that the Pope will take from that meeting is that people are crying for the end to the war. People are crying for justice. People are crying for negotiations. People are crying for peace. And there's no peace without negotiation. Like in the words of the Pope himself, he cannot decree peace. It should be negotiated. It should come from within the individual. And so that's the take home. They are not bound to speak the language I speak, but that's the overall takeoff from what they said. Before the Pope came, the Pope has a lot of information, all this in Caribou, or whatever. They are already documented at the Vatican. So this is just a rehearsal to say these are the human faces before this thing. When Andrew says they've lost priests, they have lost this, that's a fact. The Vatican knows they have lost priests in this war. But a reminder on this occasion that Papa for Roma, if you can do anything to end this thing, that would be better for all of us, because our priests will be safe, our religion will be well practiced, and so on and so forth. And so that's what the take home is. Where they were choosing, we don't know how they were choosing, but from looking across the board, it was not a bad choice, because they chose people who are supposed to have meaning. They chose a traditional ruler of importance. They chose religious leaders, the imam of importance. They chose any of the person who could talk. That was okay.
All right. If you say so, if you say that was okay, of course we'll head on to see what will play out eventually. The Pope would leave, of course, probably he has even left, and would see if there will be action into all of the words that would have been spoken today. Thank you so much, Barrister. It's been a very long journey, I must say, with you on the Pope's visit, and finally he's here. And we'll see what is next on the front burner that would have to, put all interest. But I doubt if this conversation is over. Mr. Tar may probably bring it up on Saturday. But until then, Barrister Mbeseha, thank you so much for being part of tonight's Undaunted.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. When we return from the break, we would head into Africa, where Julius Malema has been sentenced to 5 years in prison over firearms offense, granted bail pending appeal. Firebrand South African opposition leader Julius Malema has been sentenced to 5 years in prison for unlawful possession and discharge of a firearm stemming from an incident at a 2018 political rally. The ruling, delivered on Thursday, found the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, the EFF, guilty of violating South African strict gun control laws after he was filmed firing what prosecutors described as an assault rifle into the air during a public gathering. Despite the custodial sentence, the court granted Malema leave to appeal his sentence, allowing him to remain free until the appeal process is concluded. This means the outspoken politician would not begin serving his prison term immediately. However, in a significant development, the court dismissed Malema's attempt to appeal his earlier conviction handed down in October. Judges maintained that the evidence clearly demonstrated that he had contravened national firearms regulation, reinforcing the legitimacy of the guilty verdict. The case has drawn widespread attention across South Africa, given Malema's high-profile political standing and his influence among young and economically marginalized voters. Known for his outspoken rhetoric and confrontational political style, Malema has remained a polarizing figure in country's political landscape. Legal Analyst notes that while the appeal against the sentence offers Malema's temporary relief, the dismissal of his conviction appeal significantly narrows his legal options and increases the likelihood that he may ultimately serve jail time if the sentence is upheld. The incident at the center of the case dates back to a 2018 rally where video footage circulated widely in social media, prompting public outcry and triggering a legal investigation into his action. Malema and his supporters have previously argued that the prosecution is politically motivated and politically motivated as well, a claim that has been consistently rejected by authorities who insist that the case is strictly a matter of enforcing the law. The development is expected to have political ramification for the EFF, particularly as the party continues to position itself as a major opposition force in South Africa. As the legal battle moves to appeal stage, attention will remain firmly fixed on the courts, with the final outcome likely to shape both Malema's political future and broader debate about accountability and leadership in South Africa. When we return from the break, we'll head into the globe, where the UN warns of risking of rising regional conflict in Great Lakes region amid worsening grief. Top United Nations officials have issued a stark warning over rising tensions in Africa's Great Lakes region, cautioning that the situation risks spiraling into a broader conflict if urgent action is not taken. Addressing the UN Security Council on Wednesday, senior envoys highlighted the increasingly fragile security and humanitarian conditions affecting the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, and Burundi, despite a series of diplomatic efforts aimed at de-escalating the crisis. Officials said the situation on the ground has continued to deteriorate to what they described as a worrisome level. Zia, the UN Secretary General Special Envoy for the Great Lakes region, told the Council members that the threat of renewed large-scale violence remains real and immediate. He warned that long-standing cycles of instability driven by armed groups across border tensions and the political mistrust could once again engulf the nations. The risk of a slide into a regional confrontation remains tangible, Hong said. He said the Council cannot afford to see the repetition of a cycle of violence it has been examined for far too long. Eastern DRC has been the epicenter of much of the unrest, where armed groups continue to operate, displacing millions of civilians and exacerbating one of the world's most severe humanitarian crises. Allegations of external support for rebel factions have further strained relations between neighboring countries, particularly between the DRC and Rwanda, each accusing the other of destabilizing activities. UN officials also pointed to the growing humanitarian toll, with rising numbers of internally displaced persons, limited access to aid, and increasing supports of human rights violation. Aid agencies are struggling to meet the needs of affected populations amid insecurity and funding shortfalls. Burundi, while less directly involved in recent clashes, remains a key player in the nation's fragile security dynamics, with concerns that escalating tensions could draw in additional actors and widen their conflict. Diplomatic initiatives led by regional blocs and international partners, including peace talks and ceasefire agreements, have so far yielded limited results. UN representatives urge renewed commitment from all parties to engage in dialogue, respect international law, and prioritize civilian protection. Security Council members echoed the call for restraint and emphasized the need for coordinated international support to prevent further deterioration. The UN reaffirmed its commitment to working with regional organizations to stabilize the situation, but stressed that lasting peace will require sustained political will from all involved governments. The warning underscores growing concern within the international community that without decisive intervention, the Great Lakes region could face another devastating chapter of conflict with far-reaching consequences. Well, with this, we've come to the end of tonight's Undaunted. But before we go, let's take a look at the stories that made it to tonight's headlines. Tonight on Undaunted, we told you that Ambazonian State Army urges Pope Leo XIV to intervene in Ambazonian war during his historic visit to Bamenda. Also tonight, we told you that Archbishop Nkea's emotional appeal for peace moves thousands. Tonight, we took a look at Pope Leo XIV's message that urges peace and responsible leadership in the Cameroons, while religious and traditional leaders in Mankon calls for peace amidst acknowledgement of the impact of the war. On the African scene, we told you that Julius Malema, sentenced to 5 years in prison over firearms offense, has granted bail pending appeal. On the global scene, we told you that the UN warns of rising risk of regional conflicts in Great Lakes region amid worsening crisis. That's it for tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. On behalf of Barrister Team Mbeseha, our in-house analyst, and a team of technicians behind tonight's production, is good night and God bless.